Awesome. That's good. Thank you, God, for this moment. In Jesus' name. You guys can have a seat. Go ahead, Bill.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. Baby, don't hurt me.
That's enough.
Don't hurt.
What is love? We've been asking that question here, but everyone asks that question, right? I mean, we hear that question, if it's not asked specifically, it is something that our world ponders continually, asking, what is love? Where do I find it? How does it look? What should I do with it? And all those things, what is love? We ask it all the time. So let's ask this question, what do you love? Let's just do a little class participation. Remember, I'm half deaf. The air conditioners are doing their best and they're loud, but I want to hear you. So let's tell me, what do you think? What do you love? Just give me a list. God, okay, that's a good, simple answer. That's awesome. Parents, woo, we got one up here. Lee, your kiddo is... oh, come on. Brussels sprout. You just need to leave now. No, I'm just kidding. Brussels sprouts. Oh, I'm going to pray for you. All right. What else do you love? Coffee? Hunting? Kids? Pizza? Renew. That's good. I feel like we're on The Price is Right now. Right now. $4! The first answer in first service, this just shows the second service folk are way more spiritual. Because the first service folks, it took them like 8 tries to get to God. The first one they started with was bacon. And it was like, well, yeah, I love me some bacon too. It's good. But none of that Brussels sprout stuff. So here's the weirdest part about it. And that is we use the exact same word, love, to describe our emotional feelings and connectedness to bacon or to God. We use the same word. That should be strange to us, that we have this one word that somehow in our culture is so generic that we can say, I love bacon and I love Jesus in the same sentence. And in some way, it kind of means the same thing with that love thing. And so we've got to figure this out. We need to ask the question, is that real? Is that the same word that we should use? Is there a different way to understand it? And we ask that question, what is love? How do we understand this in the context of our culture, but understanding it from God's perspective? What is love? What does it look like? What does it mean? Because we don't want to think the same thing about chocolate or bacon as we do about Jesus or the church. There needs to be something else, but we also don't want to understand love for bacon and chocolate in the same context as loving our spouse or our children. There's got to be some way to separate it and understand. And so that's what we're talking about, is we need to understand it, because love is a beautiful thing, but it is often confusing if we don't understand what we're talking about. It's always important to make sure that we're defining our terms, even with something as simple as love. Because the reality is, although we would think that it would be easy to define love, it's just not. And I think our little exercise proves it. It's hard to define. Even sometimes the words that we use the most, it's hard to get it. Earlier this week, I had someone close to me, we'll just leave it at that, who said, I can't eat, I can't think straight, my hands are sweaty, I just can't, I'm so excited about this girl who seems to be expressing some love interest. My heart's beating fast, I can't think straight, I don't know what to do. Now, how many of you have ever been there? All right, better. First service, there were 3 people in there. I think they were still stuck on bacon. I just think it's like, yeah, I feel that way about bacon. I'm just telling you. Hands get a little sweaty, a little excited, that kind of thing. But yeah, so we've been there. We know what that's like. A little smile, a little glance from across the room, that kind of thing. And it creates these little excitement bubbles in our stomach and butterflies. We're captivated by that. But is that love? That's the question. Now, we for sure can say it's closely related to love, but those little ooey gooey squishy butterflies, the palms are sweaty, and I can't think straight and can't eat, that's not love. But we need to understand it because it happens. And we need to understand where it works and how we understand how that affects love and where love is with that. And so part of what we need to do is answer this question: how is infatuation, which is that ooey gooey squishy butterfly, can't think straight, palms are sweaty, all that, how do we understand that in the context of real love? And what is God talking about when we talk about love? And so we're in the middle of a series. This is our second week in. And we began it last week talking about a lot of what Chip Ingram talks about. He's a pastor and an author and a teacher, and I like Chip a lot. And he has some good thoughts and helped to kind of give some structure to what we talked about and what we're talking a little loosely, a little more loose this time than last time. But he had this idea that we jumped onto, and we made it our own here, to understand the difference between love and everything else. Because in our relationships, we mess it up so often because we don't understand what love is. But we want relationships that will last a lifetime. And this is for anyone in the room. So whether you're single or shacking or separated or solid, whatever, that's what this series is talking about, because we need to understand where are you and where are you going and what does God have to say about that. And so last time what we really did is we talked about the difference between Hollywood's recipe and God's prescription for a lifelong lasting relationship. And so, first of all, the difference between recipes and prescriptions, I just want to mention that to you because there's some new faces who weren't here last time. But it's a good reminder for the rest of us. But a recipe and a prescription are very different. A recipe is open to interpretation. It's what I like. I add a little of this, add a little of that. That's a recipe. A prescription is the same all the time. And so Hollywood's recipe for love and lasting relationships is that you find the right person, you fall in love, and you fix all of your hopes and dreams on that person. In other words, the areas in your life that you're broken and a mess and empty, you find some other person to try and complete you. Guess what? It doesn't work most of the time. And so recipe is find the right person, fall in love, fix all your hopes and dreams on them, and if it fails, when it fails, you just start over again with somebody else. And we have many that are just the walking wounded that are living out in this society that continue this process over and over and over again, looking for the right person, falling in love, fixing all my hopes and dreams, hoping they'll fix my broken areas. When it fails, I'll just start over and go find someone else. But God's prescription is very different. God's prescription is you need to not go find the right person, you need to become the right person. That's where it starts, to become who God called you to become the right person, to walk in love. We get this right out of Ephesians chapter 5, by the way, if you want to go and look at it. It's right there at the very beginning of Ephesians 5. It is to become the right person, to walk in love. That's not to fall in love, it's to walk in love, to live out a life of love, which is really where we're going more so in depth today. But to walk in love, to fix your hopes and dreams on God. In other words, those broken areas in your life that everyone in this room has. Every one of us have wounds. Every one of us have trials and challenges in our life, especially in relational ties. And it is God that has to fix those areas for you, not some other person. Other people will fail you, but it is God that can consistently work at healing those broken areas. And so, that's where we are. It is, we want to walk in love. We want to fix our hopes and dreams on God. And if that fails, we start over there to become the right person. Make sure that that's where we are. And so that's what we talked about last time. And that's where we're going, and we jump off from there to continue on this time. Understand the difference really between infatuation and love. We're going to do more of it tomorrow night at the Well. If you can come, it's going to be a great service where we're going to touch on what we're doing today. But we want to talk more about really knowing and having a test for knowing the difference between infatuation and love. And hopefully you'll come back for that. Even if it's not for you, it's something that you can use with somebody else. And there are things that I use in counseling and different opportunities like that. But when we start to talk about love, it has to start with God. And so I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump in from there. God, we thank you for this moment to be here. We thank you for the opportunity to worship together here as we pray, which is worship. As we look at your word and we study, that's worship. As we sung those songs, it's worship. As we experienced baptisms, it's worship. Because in all of this, Father, you're worthy. That's what that worship means. You're worthy. And so I praise you for this day. I praise you for the people that are here, that are watching in other parts of the country, that are just with us in spirit. And I pray that each one will have their minds open to you and their hearts open to you, that we will be truly willing to listen to what you have to say and to change our own paradigms where we're messed up or broken in understanding what you mean when we talk about love. And so, Father, I pray for your blessings in this moment and this time, that we'll get rid of all the distractions that are going on around us and that we can be fully present with you. Give me the words to say. Speak through me. In Jesus' name, amen. So any true discussion of love has to start with God. We know this because of what it says in 1 John. In 1 John chapter 4, you've got a jumping off place to understand love, to begin to understand love. In 1 John chapter 4, around verse 7, here's what it says. It says, I'm going to read just a few verses. It says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love." The very first place that you start in any discussion about love, it has to be with God, because if we start the conversation about love with us, we got to know that we are fickle. As human beings with flesh, we're fickle. Our minds can very easily get distracted, but with God, He is unchanging. Any real discussion about love has to start here. And we start there because God is love. And that everything from there flows out of that idea where God is the love. That means that out of God's love, we're able to love. We see that throughout the passage here. Like in verse 19, it says, "We love because He first loved us." The fact that God loves us allows us to love Him and allows us to love others as well, in the way that God would want us to. This is where the conversation must always begin. And so where I want to take you then is, first of all, just to the Old Testament for a couple minutes. Because the Old Testament has something to say about love, and it's important that we understand it. And then we're going to jump into the New Testament. If you have a notes page, then you can take some notes. I've got some stuff on there. If you don't have one, if you just raise your hand, we've got a couple guys that will pass around some things if you want to be able to keep track of some stuff and take some notes, okay? And so in the Old Testament, then, we begin the conversation about love. Now, it might be a strange place for you to think that we should start a conversation about love, mainly because I hear all the time from people that say, no, the God in the Old Testament is an angry God. Instead, it's the New Testament that He gets happy and loves everybody. And the reality is, it's just not true. Someday, we'll be able to unpack that more and spend some more time with it. But the God that we follow in the New Testament, the God that's there, that loving God, where God is love, it is the same God who is unchanging. It is a loving God that we see even in the Old Testament. And we see places like, for instance, one of the main words, there's really a couple words that are translated as love from the Old Testament. The first one is Ahab, A-H-A-B. Now, this love is kind of if you define it by its usage, what you see is it's kind of a general term. In other words, it can be a general term for all relationships. Like, this is the kind of love that a child would have with a parent with a child, relational love between, even a physical connectedness type of love. You would see that in various places with the word Ahab. In fact, the word Ahab is used 32 times in the Old Testament to describe God's love for us. And it's used 19 times to describe our love for God. And so we see this word. It's a pretty common word. It's all throughout. But probably, let me say, this is also in Deuteronomy, you have the Shema. And we've talked about that before here, but this is where it begins. The Lord our God is one Lord. And you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. That whole idea of loving God with all of you. We see that in the Old Testament and all the way back in the beginning, that is the call to love God with all of us. How can we love God? Because God first loved us, just like it says in 1 John 4. And so we get that, and a little later in Leviticus, you see the idea that we're to love our neighbor. Again, echoed in the New Testament. Both of those are. But it's loving God with all of us and loving our neighbor. The entire law is brought down to those two ideas. This is what we see. This is what love is. Now, there's another word that's important in the Old Testament, and it's the word hesed, H-E-S-E-D. And so this word is one of the richest words in all of the Old Testament. It is a word that basically means loyalty and connectedness, a mutual type love. It's kindness, it's mercy, it's a covenant faithfulness is what hesed means. And probably one of my favorite words is the word steadfast. The love hesed is a steadfast love. And this is a word that we often see God's love for us. It's how it's described as this hesed love. It is God's love for us is steadfast, that it is unchanging. It will never change. In fact, there's an old hymn that is the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Anyone know that song? That is this word, hesed. It is the steadfast love. I had a professor in seminary. This was his favorite word in the world. He talked about it constantly, and he wrote books about it that I have on my bookshelf that describe the God of the Old Testament as a loving God who is crazy about you. It is steadfast and strong and secure, a love that will never fail, that you can trust always and always and always. It's steadfast. And we have this kind of love from God, and it calls us to something else in our life. But already, just from that quick explanation of the Old Testament concept of love, already, I hope, you can see the contrast in what society says about love and really what God's love looks like. And what a love of God, for God, from God, how the difference is shown. In society, we see the idea of love is really about infatuation, it's about excitement, it's about passion, sensuality, a blind type devotion. It is a love that's driven by our emotions, it's driven by how our stomach feels, it's uncontrollable attraction that draws us to it. It's something we fall in and out of at any given notice, any moment in time, and it's definitely something you can walk away from. That's society's view of love. But that is not a steadfast love. And so we can already begin to see the contrast breaking through. And so although our culture is confused about what love is, and our culture is vague about what love is, it sort of goes back to a postmodern kind of idea that says what's right for you is right for you, what's right for me is right for me. As long as you don't mess with me, I won't mess with you. That's a postmodern concept. There's no absolutes, there's no truth, that sort of thing. That's where most of our society lives, philosophically anyway. It ties in with this definition of love, which is love is whatever you make it. Love is whatever you want it to be. And the issue is it's just not true. God has defined it. The question is, will we go with what he thinks or go with what the world thinks? And so I want to jump back to the New Testament now and help us understand a little bit about what love is. Now, we need to know this, again, because it will affect every relationship in your life. Understanding what love is not, we're not talking about ooey gooey squishies and give you big hugs and kisses when you walk in the door. None of that stuff. So guys, don't tune me out. This is very important, okay? But when we talk about this, yes, it affects our relationships with, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends. Well, it affects all those relationships. But understanding love the right way also affects the church. It affects how we interact with each other. It affects, honestly, how we go about our jobs, how we interact with our children, and sometimes our parents and other people that might drive us nuts. This idea of love has to affect all of those relationships. It's not just intimate relationships, it's every relationship. And we need to understand it so that we can live this out if we choose to. And so before we really jump in the New Testament passage, let me tell you that there are 4 Greek words that are defined as love. Now, that's a good thing when you have multiple words that define a complex topic like love. Like we already established earlier, in English is not a great language to do good theology in. When you can love bacon and love Jesus, and that same word defines it, it's a language it's hard to do good theology in. German is a good language to do theology in. There are lots of different ways to describe one complex thing, but lots of different words. Greek helps. Greek is better. And so we have 4 different Greek words that mean love. And so the first one, though, is stergos. Now, you don't see this in the Bible, but that word is used, at least in the Greek culture. So the time that the Bible is written, this word would have been in usage. And stergos basically means it's kind of like a family type love. It's an affection that you would have for someone you're related to. Is typically how you would define that word. Now, the next word is the word eros, E-R-O-S. This one also is not in the Bible. However, you can see the concepts there very clearly. And I'm going to read for you here in a minute out of Proverbs. And you're going to see the concept of an eros type love. But let me tell you, I got to say a word, and it's an okay word to use. But the word is an English word that is the root of this eros word that we understand, and that word is erotic. And yes, I know I just used the word erotic at church. We're okay. Are you okay? Everybody okay? Breathe deep. Yes, I said that. Here's the deal. God is not surprised by any of this because he created this kind of love. He created it. It was on purpose. He had a plan for it. God is not blushing about the idea that we're talking about this kind of love in relationships. He's just not. He designed it this way. It is a good thing. And so we talk about eros. It's a relationship between a man and woman, including that physical attractiveness and that longing. And it's necessary for a marriage to succeed. It really, really is. It's an important aspect. And we're going to talk about this more next week, by the way, when we talk about, I'm going to leave that alone. So we've got sixth graders in here and some others. We're going to have an activity for those kids to do out there if you don't want them to hear more about the birds and the bees. We'll just say it that way, okay? But it's important. It's this eros type love. We see it unfold for us in several different places, but I think one of the clearest ones is in Proverbs. So if you have your Bible, turn there with me to Proverbs chapter 5 for just a couple of minutes. All right, so what you've got going on here while you're looking up your passage in Proverbs chapter 5 is this is talking about wisdom. This is basically like a father that's giving his son marriage advice. It's probably in the context of a son about to be married or in this marriage type moment. And the father comes in and he has some dad wisdom that he wants to give before they go too far. And so we're at Proverbs chapter 5. We're going to start around verse 15. And here's where the dad starts. Son, drink water from your own cistern. Now, he's not talking about going and getting a cup and drinking water out of your well. He is using an analogy or a metaphor to help understand what's going on. Maybe he was a little embarrassed to talk about it. I don't know if you've ever had those talks with anyone. It's like you don't want to use real words, so you just sort of make up a story. That's kind of what's going on. And so the dad says, okay, son, drink water from your own cistern. What does that mean? It means you need to have faithfulness in this marriage. You need to not go out and drink water from other cisterns. This is what you're going to see. Drink water from your own cistern, fresh water from your own well. Should your springs, and then he asks this question, should your springs be dispersed abroad? Streams of water in the streets? No. This marriage relationship is a lifelong satisfaction, a companionship that is important. Let them be yours alone. This is talking to the wife. Let them be yours alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. Okay, here we go. Ready? Take a deep breath. As a loving hind and graceful doe, let her bosoms satisfy you at all times. Just go read the Song of Solomon. You'll see more of that talk. It's in the Bible. Again, God's not blushing about this. He created this. It was his idea. And so he's talking to his son. Let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated. That's intoxicated, always with her love. For why should you, my son, be exhilarated with an adulteress? He's saying, no, this needs to be a focus of this marriage relationship. It needs to be a focus of your life. But don't go spread it around in other places. Don't connect yourself with an adulteress. Don't go out there. It's counterfeit. And that's what so much of our society is challenged by on this topic with eros type love, is there's so many counterfeits out there that try and draw our attention away. And the father is saying, no, don't allow that to be the case. Why would you embrace the bosom of a foreigner? For the ways of a man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he watches all his paths. I think that's kind of funny at the end. It's kind of like the dig at the end where the dad says before you go out on the date, I may not be able to see you, but God is always watching. Did anyone else hear that? No? For real? Okay, well, a few have probably heard that. First service, all the bad kids were in first service, apparently, whose parents had to say, I may not be able to see you, but God's always watching. That's kind of right here at the end. But you know what? Even before, there's a couple of other things that tie in. Look earlier in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 8, it says, don't go near the door of her house. What's it talking about? It means don't even put yourself in a position where you can be led the wrong way. It's one reason I don't counsel women by myself. It's important. You don't want to put yourself in a position where anyone could either ask the question or you put yourself in a position where you could go down the wrong path. And so he says, don't even go near the door. Above that, again, chapter 5, verse 3, for the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech, but the end is bitter as wormwood. It's that idea that says, yeah, it might be a twinkle in the eye, a little excitement looking across the room, but watch out. It's dangerous. Even in chapter 4, a little more, verse 24, put away from you a deceitful mouth, and put devious speech far from you. Let your eyes look directly ahead, and let your gaze be fixed straight in front of you. You've heard me probably say this before. That idea of keeping your eyes focused where they need to be, and averting your eyes at times, not allowing yourself to look at other things. Because here's the deal. Let's be totally real and transparent. If you allow your eyes to glance over and look at something else, your mind can very quickly begin to wander. And your mind begins to wander, and it can create a mental image of what could be. And that mental image, if you don't take that thought captive, can very easily take a hold of you and begin to allow your mind to run wild. And it's just a matter of time before action, or at least the thought of action. And this is very clear, and it's just part of that idea that says, yes, this eros love, that's important. It's powerful. It's strong. But keep your eyes focused the right direction where you need to be. And so this is Dad counseling the son about these sexual passions and all that stuff that's so important. But again, God's not ashamed that we talk about it. He put it in the Bible. He gives it to us as a gift, and it is a gift. It's a wonderful thing. But he created this thing for marriage, and the Bible constantly is clear about it. Part of the problem, though, is Hollywood makes everything in life about eros love. Hollywood says eros love is all there is. This is all that's important. It's the fire and the passion. And eros love is the fire and the passion. But here's the deal. Fire in the right place is good. Like if you go and build a fire in your fireplace, it warms the whole house. But if you build a fire in the middle of your living room floor, you're going to burn the house down. And the problem is, in our culture, we're too used to throwing our fire around wherever we want to go. And it's too easy to just go and build a fire here and build a fire there and build a fire here. And what's happening is relationships over and over are being destroyed, and your hearts are being wounded over and over and over again. Eros love is great. It is awesome. It is amazing because God created this, but it has to come in context of a right love relationship. Otherwise, it causes more destruction. And so that leads us to our third type of love, the third Greek word, and that is phileo. And in phileo love, it's really a reciprocal love, like a reciprocating saw goes back and forth. A reciprocal love, this phileo love, means it's not all one-sided. It's connectedness. It's back and forth. I show you love, you show me love. It is combining together. That's what phileo love talks about. The Bible talks about it all over the place, and I'll give you an example here in a minute. But the concept is very simple. It means, how do you show love to one another in a reciprocal type way? You're going to spend time together. You're going to share ideas together. You're going to share activities together and hobbies together, or whatever that is, but it's objects of common affection. We're going to share that together. This is an important part of a relationship and of a life. I heard a story yesterday by one of our Renew peeps here. He's telling me about his family. And in that family, I think it's his sister and his sister's husband, they both have, we were out at the car show, they both have an old fancy classic car. And together, they spend their evenings in the garage working on their cars. Now, some of you may think that's the goofiest thing I've ever heard. But what I hear in that is phileo love. I hear that it's a love that says, I'm going to join you in your world, and you can join me in mine. And although it may not be what I prefer all the time, it is important to a love relationship that says you don't have your life and I have my life, and later on we meet up in the bedroom. Phileo love isn't that. Phileo love is we do life together. It's companionship. It's where we get the word Philadelphia, by the way, that brotherly love, that mutual love, that friendship type love. That's where it comes from. And so eros takes a man and a woman and says this is all about being a lover, but phileo says it takes a man and a woman and says this is about being best friends. We see this in Romans chapter 9. If you have your Bible, you can turn there with me. Romans chapter 9. Romans chapter 12, verse 9. I don't know what I was thinking. Romans 12, verse 9. Here's what it says. Let love be without hypocrisy. I just need to stop there and camp out for a minute. Now, I know 1 Corinthians 13, we're going to talk about that in a minute when we start to define love. Romans 12 is powerful to discuss what love really looks like. Because it's one thing to talk about it, but what does it look like? And this is real clear. Let love be without hypocrisy. What's it mean? It means it's going to act out the way you talk it out. That it's sincere, that it's real, it's consistent. And love is not manipulation. So often when I do counseling, what I hear from people is that their love relationship is really about manipulation. If I do this, I can get them to do this for me. And that makes me happy. That is a pathway to disaster. And so love must be without hypocrisy. And it says, abhor what is evil, that is, hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Would that be important in any strong relationship? To hate what is evil? Yes. Cling to what is good. How about this? Be devoted to one another in, here's our phileo word, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Have you ever thought about that idea in a marriage type relationship or even a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship that says have brotherly love for one another? This isn't talking about eros love. This is talking about a reciprocal, mutual affection and love for the other person, where we join into each other's world. And so often, again, let me just hit this real quick. So often, our society jumps right to the eros love, and we skip this part. And we skip how important it is to be connected and to do life together. And so be devoted to one another in this phileo love. Give preference to one another in honor, not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, fervent in the Lord, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, devoted to prayer. How important that would be in any relationship to persevere in trouble. And again, so often in our culture, the first sign of trouble, we want to run. But the reality is a love from God, a love that is modeled on God, is steadfast. And it says, I will walk with you through hell if I need to. Because that's my love for you. I will join your world, I will hold your hand, and we'll walk through this together. That is this kind of love, this phileo love. It is, again, now here's the deal. It's not just about the married relationship. That's why we're talking about this. This is in any relationship. This is one reason we really talk about life groups a lot. And we're going to talk about a little more in announcement time at the very end. That's not just a passing thing. It's not just a good idea. And I know you're busy, and so am I. We all are too busy for all of this stuff. That's the reality. But what a good, solid life group does for you is it allows you to have people to do life together with. People that you can connect with and have this phileo love is what this is talking about. It's companionship. Now, in my own life, and been married to Jennifer for 20 years, I'll tell you, our lives just keep getting busier and busier as we get older. I have no idea what 20 years from now will look like, but here's what I do know. We have a good marriage. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have challenges. Every marriage has problems. Every marriage needs tune-ups. Every marriage needs open conversation and communication about what's broken. And I'll tell you also the truth. She and I had one of those conversations this week. And I don't think it's accidental that I felt like our marriage was under attack this week. It was a tough week. We were not getting along. It was frustrating. It started the week before. Do you think that's accidental that we had that while we're doing a series on relationships? Just curious. Would anyone think that's, well, what a coincidence? No. This is the devil's goal, to sidetrack us and derail us. And you know what? When I started thinking about it and pondering it, here's what I heard. You have no business preaching on it. You got it messed up yourself. The moment I heard it, I went, okay, now I know where that's coming from. Everybody has those issues. But it says, okay, but I'm in this reciprocal, mutual, steadfast love. We need to sit and talk. To talk it through and to work it through. And that's what we did. And it's important. But after even this 20 years of marriage, I'll tell you one of the best things that we do in our busy lives, in our busy schedule, because we're both busy all the time, it seems like, and you probably understand that. We just live in a busy world. What we do together to make sure we spend time together is we run errands together. And I know that may sound goofy to you, but you know what? It's the only time I can figure out when we can just have she and I together and we can talk. And so if I've got something to do in Little Rock, I will call her and go, hey, what are you doing about 11 o'clock? Let's go run an errand. I hate these things. Anyway, so we'll go and we'll run errands. Why? So we can talk about life, talk about what's going on, whatever, even if it's frustrating to deal with it. It's important to make sure you're driving at low speeds when you have arguments, but you know, that kind of thing. So we all deal with that and we work through it, and it's important. But that's how you have this phileo type love. It's connectedness. It's putting someone else's needs before my own. That's a part of this love. It's speaking the truth in love, but it's restoring each other and restoring broken places and forgiving and letting your heart be shown. And then the fourth kind of love, the fourth Greek word, is the one that we talk about the most, but it is the agape love. Agape love is important. It is really defined as a giving love. Now, here's what's so strange about agape love, and that is that agape love can be one-sided. Agape love can be one direction. It doesn't have to be reciprocal, like phileo love is a reciprocal love. It's back and forth. But an agape love can be one direction. It is saying that I am going to do the best for you, even if you're not in it. I'm going to give you all that I have, even if you're not in it. This is why this kind of love, I think, should be defined as a supernatural kind of love, because it is what we see from God exactly. Now, here's what's even more interesting. In Greek culture, and again, I told you that international language in Jesus' time was Greek, and they used these words for meaning and to help us understand. But here's the deal. This word agape love in Greek was not a very popular word. No one really used it. It was colorless and flavorless. It wasn't the kind of love that we talk about. It wasn't until Jesus that this word agape really takes a strong meaning. It's the New Testament that gives this word meaning. Before, it was no big deal. And I can't tell you why exactly. The Bible doesn't explain why agape love wouldn't have been a concept that everybody loved. But I can guess. My guess is that before Christ, just like in our society, in our selfish ways, and it's all about us, that probably the concept of agape love was not particularly important. The idea of giving your life away for somebody else probably wasn't really the greatest idea or concept. But with Jesus, everything changes. With Jesus willing to die for us, with God being love and loving that way and demonstrating that love for us, that while we're yet sinners, Christ dies for us, like it says in Romans 5:8 or John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gives his only begotten Son. It's out of these things that agape love takes new meaning and takes shape, builds flavor, and we begin to understand it. So God gives us meaning. The fruit of the Spirit starts here with this kind of love, this agape love, this love of choice. It's not emotion. It's not ooey gooey squishy feeling. It is, I give you the best when you deserve it the least. I'll meet your needs even though I may not want to, but I will because of that love. It compels us to do so. And we see that all throughout Scripture, especially 2 Corinthians chapter 5. The King James Version of the Bible actually defines agape love often as charity. And if you have a King James Version and you read through there, you'll see that agape is often defined as charity. Why? Because it's giving something away and you don't expect it to be returned. This is what love really begins to look like in God's prescription. And then, of course, we go to the love passage, 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13 is that passage, and it's at the risk of tuning you out because you've probably all heard it a million times. Every wedding you go to, 1 Corinthians 13, all that stuff, love is patient, it's kind, blah, 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 and we just tune it out. Don't tune it out. It's so important. 1 Corinthians talks in verses 4 through 8. It says, agape, this kind of love, this agape love, it starts out with, it's patient. That's not a favored word probably for most of us. It's patient, which means that I'm going to put up with your junk over time without retaliating. What patient is. It's patient, it's kind, it doesn't envy. That means I'm not rivaling for attention. Have you ever been around one of those people where you go, yeah, I'm not feeling good, and they immediately go, yeah, me neither. And it's like there's a rival for attention in the relationship. And what agape love is it doesn't envy. It's not rivaling for attention. It doesn't boast. It's not proud. It's not inflating itself. Look at me. This is all about me. It's not rude. It doesn't tread on someone else's feelings. Or self-seeking. Again, it's all about me kind of idea. Not easily angered or provoked. That might be a challenging one too, huh? We might need some fuse transplants, right? Lengthen the fuse a little. Not easily angered or provoked. I still have written on the inside window of my Jeep, slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. It's important. But it's not pouting. It's not saying, I'm going to take my ball and go home. Oh, here's a favorite one that I hear from people in counseling all the time. And it's this statement. Well, once she says she's sorry, then I will do X, Y, and Z. Guess what? That is not agape love. It just isn't. It says my love is conditional, and it's only conditional on if I'm right and you admit that you're not. But love is not provoked. It keeps no record of wrongs. In our family, we call that digging up bones. Don't dig up the bones. If we've dealt with it and it's been forgiven and worked past, don't bring it up again. It's old. It's dead. It's gone. Agape does not delight in evil, that, ha-ha, I caught you. Let's not rejoice in someone else's mistakes. Gives me permission in my own mind. Well, I can go make mistakes now because they did. No, that's not agape love. It rejoices in truth. Celebrates achievements of righteousness. That's what it is. It celebrates in truth, but it always protects and trusts and hopes and perseveres. There's our word again for steadfast. That's why this is so important. This agape love is sacrificial. It's unconditional. It's supernatural. It's meeting a need when it hasn't been met before. It is saying, I am going to do the best for you, but I make this choice. Agape love also ties in with celebration. In fact, we have the word, and we have the concept out of 1 Corinthians 11 that talks about a love feast. What is it talking about? It's talking about communion. And that we come together because of what Christ did, and we celebrate together. This is agape love. It is unmerited and unwavering love. And so out of all this discussion with agape love, how many of those qualities or pieces along the way are all about our emotional feelings? How much of it? None. Instead, what we see over and over, when we begin to understand God with love and we understand love from God, that it is about sacrifice, it is about giving, it is about doing for others, and putting someone first. That's what love is all about. And so we ask this question, so what? Why is this important for us? Why is it important for us right now? Well, it's because we just don't get it. It's just so elusive, it seems like, to understand love in God's perspective rather than the world's. In the world, it's about infatuation, which we mistake for love all the time. It's that idea that says, I feel excited and feel little butterflies, look across the room and get a smile or whatever, but that's not love. And I have seen marriages destroyed, relationships destroyed because they looked across the room and they saw a twinkle in somebody's eye, they smiled back, and now all of a sudden they have a new soulmate. Baloney. It's not love. It's infatuation. And infatuation doesn't last. It's chemical. It's something that does happen to us. And there's something important about that chemical reaction and that excitement, but you can't build a relationship on it. It doesn't last. It lasts like 18 months, best case scenario. It has to be more. Love, as we've described it here, is an enduring affection. It's an affection that lasts, it matures, it's a spiritual choice that says, I'm going to live out my life with you as God has lived it out with me, and as I live it back. That's what it begins to look like, and that's the way that it has to work. Otherwise, no relationship will last. Whether it's a married relationship or a friendship relationship with your kids or any of those things, it has to be this willingness to say, I am in this. It is a spiritual choice to be a vessel sharing God's love with you. Healthy relationships, all of them, are built on agape love. Agape love is the foundation. It is the choice. It is the love of choice. And out of that agape love, we grow into that phileo love where it's mutual, it's reciprocal. And out of that comes the eros love in a committed relationship. And the Bible message is in a married relationship is where that eros love comes from. But let me tell you, guys, I'm going to talk to both the men and the women in the room because this is important. Guys, if you go to work all day long and you come back and you walk in the door and you immediately go to the garage to go work on your own little projects, and then the day is through, nighttime, time for bed, and you walk in the door and expect some eros love, it's not going to work out so well. It's just not. Eros love is built on phileo love and agape love. And you've got to understand that out of a committed, strong relationship of people that are committed to doing the best for each other when you deserve it the least, committed to the connectedness and the mutual benefit of relationship and love and companionship, the eros love comes out of that. And it's important. God designed it. It was a part of what he intended for the married relationship. But let me also say to the women, and that is, if your husband comes home and he goes immediately to the garage to tinker, you might need to pick up a tool and go tinker in the garage too. Because this is part of that phileo love that says, I'm going to enter into your world and you enter into mine. The reality is, even if you've got a husband that's not here, and a lot of husbands don't come because we talk about topics like love, probably. But if they aren't here, one of the best ways you can demonstrate the love is to demonstrate the love. To show them what it looks like to enter into his world. But it's all of us in our relationships to enter into each other's world, whether it's a married relationship or a life group or just a friendship, to enter into each other's world. That's what love really begins to look like. And so a balanced relationship, though, is built on this foundation of agape love. Without that as the foundation, our relationships are challenged because we're just dealing with someone else that's flesh, that's so easy to make mistakes, so easy to be challenged. We need to focus on that one thing where love doesn't change. You know, most of the time when I do premarital counseling, one of the examples I use is a triangle. And last Monday night we talked about this triangle that helped us understand the difference in Hollywood view of love and God's view of love. In Hollywood, it's upside down, and it all starts with the physical. And eventually you hope to get to some spiritual connectedness. But in God's world, it starts with the spiritual, and it grows and it builds to that eros-type love after all these things are put into place. But really the triangle is this, and that is in any strong marriage relationship that is focused on agape love, it's not just two people going at each other and trying to find love back and forth. Why? Because just trying to love somebody out of your own will, which is what agape love often is saying, I'm going to choose to love you and do the best for you when you deserve it the least. It's like trying to hit a moving target because we're fickle and we change and our ideas change over and over and here and there. And so really what you need in a relationship that's based on love, that's based on who God is you need both of you to be focused on who God is. Because God doesn't change. God isn't running away. God's love for you is consistent, and it makes a triangle. God is at the top, and you two are on the sides, and you're both focused on that one thing that doesn't change. And when you are, out of that agape love, all else falls into place. So where do we go from here? How do we wrap this whole thing up? Because we've got lots of people in here and in different places and relationships. And so let me say this first of all, and that is, as with everything we talked about last time, having a strong, lifelong relationship, a relationship that will last, it is not about finding the right person, falling in love, and fixing all your hopes and dreams on them. It's about becoming the right person. So everyone here, it's about becoming who God intended you to be and to walk in love, this agape love, this phileo love, to walk in that love in each moment of our day and to fix our hopes and dreams on God. And out of that connectedness with Him, relationships will grow and become what they're intended to become. And so let me address a couple of the groups specifically. First, and let me also say this. You need to pray for agape love. I think that's important. That you pray that God will show you how to love someone when they're unlovable. That you'll ask God to show you how to love someone and how to demonstrate that love when they don't deserve it. I think it's an important part of your prayer life. If you have someone in your life that you're challenged with, pray for it. Because in that prayer, what you're doing is you're not just praying that they will change. You're praying that God will change you. Change your own heart. So for my single friends that are in the room or listening online, I just want to say, don't be impatient. Practice agape love. Practice what it looks like, because agape love isn't just with a spouse, isn't just with a boyfriend or girlfriend. It's love all the time. It's saying, I'm going to do the best when you deserve it the least. I'm going to practice this in every way. Or this phileo love, practice that. Get involved with other people and do life together with somebody else. Because I'll tell you, one of the greatest reasons people fall into bad relationships is because they are lonely. Don't do life on your own. Get connected with other people who have this kind of mindset, that will walk this road with you and be companions with you and love you and help you grow in this. And also, I want to say, protect your eyes and your heart. Don't look at things that are going to drive your mind to going to places you don't need to go. Protect your eyes. Protect your heart. And if you're in a relationship now, ask hard questions. Are we in infatuation, or are we really in love? And if you're in love, you need to call me, and let's talk about some premarital counseling and move this the right way. Stick with that agape love. Wait on the eros love. If you're separated or divorced or widowed, let me say to you, grieve those losses. They're real. Even if you're remarried, it's okay to grieve that loss. I talked to someone this week who said they were still grieving a loss over a past relationship, and it was affecting the current one. Okay, grieve it, which is I acknowledge that it's there, and I let God heal it. Don't go just find somebody else to try and heal your brokenness. It's not possible. But allow God to come and to heal that brokenness and focus on God's love. He will heal that area. And then for my married friends, let's take this seriously. Practice these things. Practice agape love. Practice that phileo love. Teach your kids and others about what this looks like. If you have to give your kids the talk, this should be part of it. To say there's a Hollywood view and there's a God view. And this is what it looks like. This is what love really means. This is what infatuation means. And help them to see what love really is. And if you're here today and you're saying, I'm not in love anymore with my spouse, let me just say, choose to love. Flesh will always fail. And if you just think going and finding another flesh to love will heal it, it won't. Instead, ask God to heal those places. Ask for forgiveness in the places you failed. Accept that forgiveness. Become the person God has called you to be. And to walk in that love. Fix your hopes and your dreams on Him. The last thing I want to say is out of 1 John chapter 4 again. 1 John chapter 4, this is where we jumped in and said that God is love. Verse 15, here's what it says. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him, and he in God. We have come to know and have believed the love which God has for us. God is love. And the one who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. By this, love is perfected with us, so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment. Because as he is, so also are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. But we love because he first loved us. Allow God to love you. Allow that God love to propel you forward in your own love for him and for others. And that passage actually goes on to say that if you say you love God but you hate your brother, you don't really love God. And that is even in our relationships. It would be if you say you love God but you hate your spouse, you hate your kids, that idea of loving God is not there in you. And it is asking God to chip away those rough edges, to allow him in to really unfold his love for you in your life, and allow that love that he gives you to transfer into every other relationship, whether you're married or not, to allow that agape love, the love that he gives us, the love that we see at the cross, to transfer into the lives of the people around us in every way. So if you are ready to make a commitment to follow Christ and accept the love that he has for you, or if you just need help and you're broken in your relationships and you need to be prayed over, that God will give you direction and healing, I'll do that with you too. So John's going to lead part of another song. I'm just going to go off to the side. If you want to respond, to pray, to seek guidance, this is a good time. Let me pray for you now, and you can respond as John sings. God, we thank you for this moment, to be able to come and be in your presence, to understand what love actually means from the Bible rather than what society tells us about it. I pray that we grow in this, that we'll understand more and more that love looks like you, that you are willing to show it to us and give it to us so that we can be your people who reflect that love in our relationships, in the lives of people around us. Let us be your people, who are people that are known for our love. In Jesus' name.
How beautiful this love, you would lay down your crown, surrender your throne to heaven so that I could be found. How awesome is love, conquered the grave. Love that can move the mountains, that knows me by name. It's unbreakable, it's undeniable. Nothing will ever separate us. Your love is higher than the skies above us. Your